Hey, how's it going? We're hanging out. This is writing, publishing, and authorship. My name is Michael Finney. I'll run down a little bit of the news highlights for you since the last episode 2 weeks ago. I always put this stuff up into the nest on the Twitter space. So if you're not catching that, then this is a little bit of a update from the past to the future. Tomorrow, We Are the Film 3, space hosted by Chris Hackett. He lets me hop on as the co-host to hang out and talk a little bit. We will be discussing AI and aesthetics, which I think in a roundabout sort of way is about art, not necessarily that there's an aesthetic movement linked to AI, but that certain outputs or combinations of outputs begin to have an aesthetic that exemplifies the fact that they were created by AI. Who knows? I don't know. I don't have the notes. We'll see tomorrow on the actual chat. I don't know what notes he has. So I'll probably just chime in wherever I have some thoughts, and he'll kind of guide the discussion as he typically does, which is good. Additionally, Anunnaki, been out all summer. It's up on streaming, and the ebook and audiobook are out there. Check it out if you haven't yet. Also, every other month this year, I have been putting out one daily historical fact video. These are composed of public domain images in many cases, in others, my own photography that I've collected over the years of locations and different things. Set into motion by AI. Here we are back on that topic again. And then kind of composited together like a motion collage with a little bit of information and notable history layered over in the voiceover, bringing it to life. This month is September, obviously, so 30 of those for this month. And then we'll be back to it in November when I release the actual book coming out as a hardback. I have been proofing through the manuscript, making final little changes and additions to that. I am going to begin working on the cover design, which I think is going to be a little bit of a mess. Who knows? We'll see. Maybe AI can help me with that. Even I will see how it goes. I'll do my best with it, and ideally, it's good, and everybody's happy and satisfied with my design capacity, which is lackluster. Let's be honest here. I know where my skills don't lie, and design graphics is not one of them. So I feel like taking advantage of AI in some way is probably going to be the smart choice to smooth things out there a little bit. This month's ebook and audiobook release is Love, Death, and Explosives. Thomas Pynchon's Polypsychology, a long-form essay I've been putting together since the spring and finally released at the beginning of this month. It is now, since our episode 2 weeks ago, being published to audiobook platforms. It has been getting picked up by Google and Apple, Kobo, Nook, a few others, some of the, darker alleys of audiobook listenership. It's not on Audible yet, has not passed their QC quite yet. I assume Next week, it will. In the middle of the week, I figure maybe Wednesday or Thursday at the latest would be my guess. Maybe it'll happen by the end of this week. It's not long. They could push it through. They could listen to it and you know, let it out there into the world. That is only it's just under an hour. I think maybe it's like 53 minutes or something. It's not a long listen. It's not a long ebook, so that's something to consider as well. You can basically hammer through it in probably 30 minutes on your own if you were to use your own eyes to read it instead of my recording. I do think, having done one audiobook a month this year, that there's some interesting things I've kind of learned from that. And as much as I gripe about audiobook editing, maybe I've gotten a little better at it. I have been going back and listening to some of my earlier releases because of repackaging some of the stuff from exploring our national parks. And that has given me an opportunity to evaluate the quality of some of that audio. The first two audiobooks I did, I think I was still using a condenser microphone to do it with. And, while it's not bad or horrible, I think I've kind of streamlined things once I moved over to a dynamic mic and kind of dialed in EQ and things like that. Repeatedly using this stuff, you're able to find maybe a sweet spot. I don't know. I don't want to say I'm good at it. Just that I've done it enough times to hopefully eliminate some of the worse habits, the bad habits, and get it sounding a little better. That said, playing music and recording music, I had used condenser mics a lot for vocals and stuff like that. And I, obviously use them for those earlier books, but I just find that the amount of work you have to do when you're basically doing guerrilla production, not necessarily in a legit studio setup or anything like that for music, is that there were so many incidental little noises, from the building or the environment or, your own self, that getting that track cleaned up was so much work that it made it really arduous to end up with the final result. And to be able to do, as I said earlier, an audiobook once a month this year, it probably would have been just a insurmountable feat because of how much work would have been required to do that. Switching over to the dynamic, you can rely on noise gate a little bit more reliably. I think the EQ, while you lose some of the highs, you also get a very sort of radio friendly sort of equalization range out of the dynamic mic. Most people are generally familiar with. So that is something that I'm considering more of as I go into doing the audiobook for the Daily Historical Facts. I'm going to begin tracking that this month before the end of the month, and then hopefully take my time editing through October so that I can get that submitted and release it in November. I think that that'll be a good production schedule to pace myself and not feel crunched and under the gun, basically, like I did for the Pynchon essay, which was late. My voice kind of I had allergies and I didn't want to record. And you can hear something is a little off in there. I can, at least. Maybe you can't. I don't know. Maybe you don't listen to my voice enough yet. And it's not bad. If I had thought it was bad, I would have waited another day or two to record. But I felt like it was all right. I did notice, though, I had to retrack maybe, let's say, half a dozen lines or whatever, for incidental noise or mistakes or whatever that I caught along the way. And it was a little tougher to match my voice just because, some of the sinus congestion creates a tonal quality to your voice that is difficult to replicate artificially. And that's how that goes. The session from 2 weeks ago is up on podcast platforms, a relatively short one, as this one may in fact end up being as well. And that's okay. We don't mind short sessions just to put something out there and get some thoughts onto the tape and out into the airwaves. It's sort of a chance to think out loud and get ideas out of the head. And I've been doing that in a similar way with a couple of writing projects I have been doing. One of which is a short story I'll put out next spring. I have the whole story outlined, and I've probably talked about this a little bit here and there. But what I'm doing is basically speaking the conversion of the outline out loud, speech to text, and having my phone write down what I'm saying. And sometimes I do a little bit of the dialogue. Most of it is just prose and sort of like world building and stuff like that. But it's not any faster than typing, I could say that. But it's a different exercise. Maybe a little bit of the oral tradition, as we would say. A good exercise, I think, and a challenging one because of that. I'm taking my time. I thought I'd be a little bit further with this. I wanted to have an alpha draft of this done, meaning basically one run through of the entire outline from the beginning of the story to the end, in place by this month. I'm a little behind on that. It goes that way. I think I can catch up with it in little bits. Certainly be done with that, as soon as I can, because I'm interested in getting my mind kind of re-immersed into that story. I thought I'd have more time, and I just have not. That's okay. Been turning out a lot of other stuff. So long as I get that short story out by, say, May, that'll be fine. I'll be happy with that. Target word count for that is about 6,000. So I'm at about 10% right now. I figure I'll be somewhere between 25% and a third of the word count that I need when I finish this alpha pass. And then I'll start to kind of flesh out more of the dialogue and a little bit more of the particular world building. I've done a lot of research. I haven't necessarily inserted all of that stuff into there. I like to go for walks and I think about this stuff and I'll put notes down. That's kind of how I built out the character designs and the world in general and the factions and the outline for this story. In fact, this stuff will just kind of like pop up in my mind while I'm walking, and I'm not in a rush. I'm not in a hurry. I'm not a prolific word count writer. Very fairly limited in that regard. But I like the story. I'm happy to tell the story and to kind of pace it out. I'm not in a hurry for it. There's other things I want to do. I really want to get back into video next year. I've been sitting on volume 3 of the national parks videos for since the beginning of this year. I have not touched them. Unfortunately, made no progress on that project since January, I think. So as soon as I finish the last audiobook release for this year, I am going to shift gears and get into that, return to that and basically try to get all of that complete and released in Q1 of 2026. I'm just shooting for as broad of streaming distribution on that as I can. And then we'll see, I think I've gotten better at creating video for streaming distribution over the years. Maybe I haven't. I don't know. We'll see. I've had things rejected. I've had things picked up. I am a nobody in the grand scheme of that community. So anytime I find any amount of success with it, it is cool with me. Now, returning to writing, I've been doing a little experiment over the last couple of weeks. I have been producing an audio story, strictly audio. Now, I've been using AI to do this. I will create an outline and then I'll feed the outline to an LLM and it will spit out a bunch of stuff to me. Some of it's good, some of it's not. Sometimes I'll say, hey, change this, change that. Other times I'll just take what it gives me and then rip through that and, manually make all the changes that I want. And then I do a reading of it. I do a vocal performance and I record it. And then I export that and I send it off to one person. It's a cool and fun experiment in storytelling and design and production, narrative fiction, whatever you want to kind of lump into the basket, broadly and generally and specifically. The thing with it there too is I don't sit and like ruminate on it. I'm not doing any research. I'm just spitballing an outline, having it give me whatever it does. I make one pass over the editorial to clean up some of the language or remove some of the cliche stuff or the superfluous little phrases and things, so that it reads a little bit more natural. Sometimes when I'm reading it on the screen, I'm like, this is AI, and it doesn't feel right. So, it is what it is. But I think that that's like a really organic way of generating a story. Could I see something else kind of coming out of that? Maybe doing another sort of run through of that story and really kind of bulking it up. Maybe, I don't want to say yes. I don't want to say no to it. I think it works because of the reading performance strictly. I think if it was printed and published the way it is, when I'm reading it, it reads very much like some of the, commercial schlocky sort of fiction that's out there. And it's fine if you're looking just for stuff to read, or a particular, vein of storytelling or whatever scenario, it's fine. It it does that. Um, it doesn't 100% sound like my voice. I haven't built in any of my material for it to lean on yet. I do intend to do that, but the um, where it comes to life is in the reading. And I'm not saying that I'm giving it a, a, a great theatrical treatment or anything. I'm just saying that it feels more natural verbalized than it does on the page. Interesting to note. Um, let's see, what else do we have? Oh, also, uh, as you may or may not know, I put out one article for writers a month on Substack. Um, this month's was it was on editing and revising, and here I was just talking about how I'm not doing much editing or revising, and then just ripping a vocal read of a story and shipping it. But you should edit. You should revise. I like to do a lot of that kind of in the flow of things. And to get back to a little bit of audiobook editing and revisions, while I was editing the pension thing, because it is just really articulate, uh, it's very articulated words and phrases um, and sentences kind of throughout that need to be, you know, um, I don't know, in my opinion, performed a certain way, but also spoken properly. There's some kind of $20 terms in there sprinkled throughout. What I was finding is that if I was editing and then sequencing, that was really slowing me down. What I ended up doing about halfway through is I just was like, I got to stop sequencing. I'm just going to edit, just going to rip through the entire rest of the audio and grab up all the lines that I want. And then I will sequence after. Now, I'm not saying that I saved myself time. I don't know. Maybe I did. Maybe I didn't. It just was a lot of back and forth for the first half between editing and then sequencing the timing of the phrases and lines, or cutting things up, and kind of moving from very wide segments to then very narrow segments. And when I was just kind of going wide and letting it rip and moving along, um, I was able to process it more rapidly. The entire thing I recorded on a Friday, and then I had it submitted by Wednesday night, I think. Um, I did this session. It was about 2.5 hours to record, and then I would guess I probably spent, I don't know, I guess maybe 7, 8, maybe 10 hours editing it. That sounds about right, I guess I would say. Um, and that editing for me takes like 3 to 4 times as much time. You basically have to listen to the entire thing at least once all the way through. Many times you are really you're re-listening to segments numerous times to compare which take was the best one. Maybe you did 5 takes, you narrow it down to 2 or 3. Well, then you kind of like process of elimination, trying to get it down to 1. Or if you're like, I like the beginning of this one, I like the ending of that one, I'm going to put them together. That's just kind of how it goes with that stuff. You do what you got to do for it. As it is for today, let's call it for today. I've got everything off my mind since 2 weeks ago. And, the sumo tournament's on. We don't want to distract away from all the daily action you can catch on NHK World via your Roku or internet service provider. Check it out. I'm a day behind. Last time I saw, it was still a tie at the top between the two Yokozuna. We'll see how it goes over the course of the week. I got to catch up, and today is day 4. So it very well might be a completely different scenario by now. At any rate, you've been a joy, and we will talk again before too long.